What is happening with Chinese developers knowing how to translate Western properties better than the Western developers themselves? And this is what we're seeing with Lara Croft and Tomb Raider, who's being translated into a Chinese game called Blade Point, which is supposed to be an action adventure game. It's something we've been seeing with a lot of these models for Lara Croft being seen all across the video gaming landscape, because it seems like Aspire or Crystal, the studio that owns this brand, is selling it out everywhere. We're seeing Lara Croft everywhere, whether it's Fortnite, Dead by Daylight, or many other properties out there. Lara Croft is getting a lot of play out there, and I think this is continuing on with the Chinese video game, where they're getting their shot to make their version of a Lara Croft, and the version that we're seeing is the type of Lara Croft we've always wanted to see in a video game. And I think this is the craziest thing that a lot of people are seeing with this version of Lara Croft coming out from a Chinese developer making a game called Naraka Blade Point, which is supposed to be some sort of sword action adventure game. And I think having Lara Croft in it is an interesting prospect. I guess she gets tossed into a wormhole and we get to see this character into this new fantastical world, and I think this is the type of thing we actually want to see from Lara Croft. But of course, that's not what we're getting from Lara Croft these days when it comes to Western development games developers, or when it comes to the entertainment side with Hollywood. We're getting the version that is the typical modern day era version that has no personality other than girl boss mode and is probably an LGBTQ member. And I think this is the thing people are tired of seeing in the video gaming industry. So now we're seeing Chinese developers have their hand on this property, and we're seeing a version of Lara Croft that we actually want to see for once. And I think this is the amazing thing about this version, where it just looks like a cute version that is palpable and appealing and attractive to the fan base, where we're like, okay, this is the Lara Croft game we've been wanting for the past 10 years. I know people are like the new version of Lara Croft as well, but I think that version was an interesting detour version that we could see of Lara Croft, but it's not a version I would ever want to see again. And I think this is where we're getting an update, where we're going back to the basics, where we're getting a beautiful model of Lara Croft now. And I think this is the thing people are looking forward to when it comes towards this promotional campaign, where they're actually including Lara Croft into this game. I think it's cool. It makes me have a vision of a Lara Croft that we're probably never ever going to see again, because the people that have control of Lara Croft are not interested in making a fun, exciting version of Lara Croft. They're just thinking about, oh, how can I inject my own feelings and politics into whatever I'm doing? And I think this is the thing that's reflected back in all the models that we're seeing nowadays when it concerns Lara Croft. The new look from Crystal Dynamics of Lara Croft has the strong chin and masculine features that we see in a lot of video games that are coming out nowadays that try to avoid having soft feminine features or feminine curves in their characters. And I think that's a reflective design that we're seeing from Crystal Dynamics and Tomb Raider. That's what we're getting, and that's what we expected, and that's what we see reflected back in on ourselves when we watch other games within the industry, where we see beautiful models turned into haggard looking 3D models with their representations in the video games that they're put into. We see this with Star Wars Outlaws. We see this with Marvel Spider-Man 2 and Mary Jane. And of course, famously, we saw this with Horizon Forbidden West with Aloy, where they turn into a chipmunk filled with nuts in her mouth. And I think that's the thing people were frustrated with, seeing all these designs in America, where it's just made to strip away the attractive feminine appeals of any female characters that they do try to render or model up. And I think when we see a Chinese developer actually get a shot at making one of the Western characters, they make a beautiful design that we actually want to see and engage with. And I think that's what we're seeing with the Lara Croft design, where people are going, wow, they actually made a good looking Lara Croft, and that's doing things that are interesting actually for once. That is just not lost in some writer's emotional appeal about their own childhood trauma that they wanted to surface and see on a video game screen. I think that's the thing that we've been getting for the past 10 years when it comes to Lara Croft. We're getting someone else's personality injected into a Lara Croft character, and that's not the character we actually want to see. And I think this is the thing where we're getting someone actually engaged in some sort of fantasy, and okay, let's just take Lara Croft into some other world where she's fighting monsters and demons, and this is an interesting thing to see with the character in and of itself. And I just love what they're doing with it, and seeing these events where Lara Croft is in different games, I think it's a good thing too, where we get to have an idea of Lara Croft doing different things for once, and I think this is the best version of these cross promotional events where we have these two players from two different games actually playing within the same environment and sharing their own gameplay perspectives in the game. And I think I just love it, and it's just amazing to see China actually make a good version of Lara Croft. I think us as gamers that have been playing Lara Croft games, Tomb Raider games for a while, we wish we could see this version over time. But of course, I think since 2014 and 13, we've been getting the downgraded version. Of course, it was the gritty era. That was the excuse for getting the gritty version. And I think after a while, people got tired of the gritty version of Lara Croft. People want the fantastical, wondrous, and aspiring version of Lara Croft that we saw in the first iterations of Tomb Raider. And that is not something we've been seeing lately, especially when you look at the Netflix TV show that is in development right now, where they're more focused on making this emotional, handicapped version of Lara Croft that is more focused probably on her gender preference, rather than actually getting Tomb Raider artifacts and doing dangerous things. It seems like she's trying to save communities and save artifacts and give back to the people and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, Lara Croft is not like that. She's doing dangerous things for her own fun, and maybe she'll help some people out, but that's not the main goal. I think that's the thing that is missing nowadays, that people can't make the Lara Croft that we used to like in the past. That character was made in a time where people were freer to write things that were interesting and engaging. And I think what we're getting now from the writers that are making Netflix shows that are doing things with this character, we're getting people that are handicapped by their own perspective, handicapped by their lack of creativity, and handicapped by their political points of view. And I think in the past, people weren't handicapped by those elements. They were free to explore characters and designs, and that's why we had Lara Croft stealing artifacts, not caring about other cultures, killing other people in their cultures, not caring about them either way if they try to attack her. And I think that's the version of Lara Croft I miss. I know people are going to say that's the evil Lara Croft. No, that's the Lara Croft that is this, in essence, the character that we all fell in love with. That it's devil may care attitude that was on par with 007, where she didn't care about certain things and she did things on her own for her own selfish reasons. And I think this is not the version we'll ever get today, because the people making these properties nowadays don't have the creative freedom or the imagination to explore such a character. And I think it's someone you could explore, even keeping your personal politics about stealing artifacts and stuff like that. You can still make an interesting character in that world that does these things. And I think you can make an argument where you talk about why she's doing those things, but that's not the case anymore. You have to have political correct Croft, and we're getting a version that's uninteresting and wholly unappealing. That a Chinese game maker can make a more interesting Lara Croft under 10 minutes than an entire Western games development world can make within 10 years. Because I think the Lara Croft here is more interesting than the last three versions of we saw these past 10 years in this updated generation version of her. So this is my 2 cents on the situation. Maybe you disagree, maybe you like the gritty Lara Croft that's always getting beat up. Yeah, it was fun, but it wasn't that great to me, and I think this version is way more interesting to me. But you tell me what you think about the situation. What do you think about China making a better Lara Croft than Western games developers? It seems like China is learning how to do a lot of better things than a lot of developers now, with Black Myth Wukong and a whole host of other titles coming out. And it seems like they know how to make a better Lara Croft already than Crystal Dynamics. And I think that is an interesting thing to see now coming up in the industry nowadays. But you leave your 2 cents. Let me hear what you have to say. Like, comment, share, subscribe. This is Wagner Knows Why. Catch you next time.